All right, good afternoon and welcome to the Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust meeting of December 21st, 2021. Thanks for joining us. If anyone would like to speak on an item, please fill out a request to be heard form and give it to a staff member. Forms are available on the desk in the lobby. All right, I will now call this meeting to order. Item 2 is minutes from the November 23rd trust meeting. Is there a motion on the minutes? All right, we have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. And the item passes. Brings us to item 3 on the agenda, ratification of claims. Do we have a motion on the claims? We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. And the item is passed. Brings us to number 4 on the agenda, items for individual consideration. Item 4A is the grant of a quitclaim deed to COPTA for property in the vicinity of E.K. Gaylord Boulevard between Southwest 3rd and Southwest 4th. Wiley?
As part of the Boulevard project and the COPTA garage construction, we received property, the city received property from ODOT. And there were some parcels that were identified early and some that were identified later. And we had to pay for those properties. They built the garage on the properties that we're giving them today, so we want to go ahead and give it to COPTA so they own all the property under their garage.
Gotcha. Any questions or comments? If not, we can entertain a motion.
I'm doing it verbally. Yay.
Oh, what'd you do?
Happy fingers.
All right, please cast your votes. And the item passes. Brings us to item 4B, release of deed of declaration of covenants for the Carnegie Center project. Wiley?
As part of our incentive agreements on the Economic Development Trust, we require the property owners to file a deed of declaration of covenants promising that they'll pay us a minimum tax payment, and there's a process in there. And after they've completed their requirements, that lien that we filed, or that deed, is a barrier to the land. So we want to release that so that it clears title to the land. And we'll be having a few of these over the next 3 or 4 months that, as projects have finished, we want to release those.
Good.
I'm going to try in the future to make it an automatic process. I didn't think of it until later on, but when we put it in the economic development agreement, I'll make it automatic, that the manager can sign off on it.
Okay. It is nice seeing projects come to fruition, though.
Yeah, and they met all their minimum tax payment requirements, so it's all good.
Good. Any questions?
This is the Judy Hatfield project.
Okay. If not, I'll take a motion. We'll have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. And item 4B passes. Item 4C, an economic development agreement with Signify Health for the creation of a new call center facility in Oklahoma City with 224 new quality jobs, not to exceed $400,000. Kathy?
Yes, this is an economic development agreement. You've already had a presentation from this company, so this is the agreement that spells out how the incentives will be provided to them. It's 224 jobs, an average salary of about $46,000 a year, and capital investments of about $400,000.
Any questions for Kathy on this item? If not, I'll entertain a motion. We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
I'm an aye as well. Screen froze up.
Item 4C passes. Item 4D, Economic Development Agreement with One Red Oak LLC for the Harmony School Affordable Housing Project, not to exceed $1.3 million.
This is the economic development agreement to provide affordable housing incentives to the Harmony School project. The project is a 40-unit, multi-family senior housing project. There'll be 20 units in the historic Harmony School and then 20 new built units. The council has approved an allocation of $200,000 from the Northeast Renaissance TIF district, and originally at $1 million affordable housing allocation. The council recently increased that allocation by $100,000 in order to provide funds to the developer to provide backup generators to each unit in the development. So this agreement spells all that out and provides for a 20-year affordability time period for the project.
Any questions? If not, we can take a motion. Go ahead and cast your votes, please. And the item passes. Quit Googling. Item 4E is the joint resolution with the City of Oklahoma City adopting the Film Incentive Program as an amendment to Oklahoma City's General Obligation Limited Tax Bonds Program and Policy. Jeff?
Yes, thanks, members of the trust. I wanted to walk through a draft version of an incentive proposal for you to consider, for us to take forward to the council as Chairman Stone stated, that would modify and give us some extra tools in our tool belt related to support for the film industry, in addition to the primary job incentive tools that we currently have on the books. So I want to walk through this proposal with you, and then we can answer some questions. So the purpose of our overall film incentive program is to, as I said, give us an extra tool in our tool belt related to support for the emerging film industry that continues to see success in the Oklahoma City metro area and honestly statewide. The overall goal of this program would be to support the growth of a sector as a whole, not specific film projects. Through the support of specific film projects, obviously to create new jobs, create new business opportunities locally, and increase sales tax and local sales tax collections. We see this as a necessary tool to be more competitive, not only with our peers throughout the state, but on a national level as well. A team of folks were part of the conversation to think about how to create a tool like this. One of the primary considerations that we walked through was how to make sure that any tool measured a true return on investment back to the city. When you think about programs like film, it's easy to get stirred up about the emotional side of what we perceive to be a really good thing emotionally for our city, but wanted to make sure we looked at the hard and fact numbers related to the true return on investment, in this case on a sales tax collections capabilities back to the city, in the same way we looked at traditional SIP. So we looked at two big buckets of work, if you want to go to the next slide. Oh, sorry, go back. Yeah, sorry. Two big buckets that we would incent here. One would be feature films longer than 75 minutes. Those projects would have to be to meet qualifying thresholds of at least $500,000 in eligible expenses, and I'll talk about that more in a moment. To meet a baseline incentive of a sales tax rebate or a qualifying expense rebate of approximately 5%. Feature films that met a higher threshold of $5 million or more in qualifying expenses will be eligible for up to 10% of a rebate, and I'll talk about that more also. In a separate bucket, TV or streaming series projects, which we see as really I think the meat and potatoes of what we want to see here, things that are filmed over a long period of time, and are not just one-off productions, but seed long-term production value here in Oklahoma City. Would have a baseline threshold of $100,000 in qualifying expenses for up to a 5% rebate. Film projects or TV projects or film series of more than $500,000 would be also eligible to go up to that 10% rebate amount. So I mentioned that's a baseline of up to 5%. You know, this is the way it's written in the statute that you have in front of you, is that 5% is an estimate. Like SIP programs, we have the ability as a team to look at, is 5% the baseline, or is 3% a baseline, or some other modified amount. To be able to go above 5%, we added some criteria that we thought really tied into our conversation about building a bigger pool of talent and industry locally. You can see that list here. Filming on a local film stage, filming multiple episodes or projects in the city, having post-production operations in Oklahoma City, also qualifying for the state cash rebate like the SIP program. We want to see this as additive to incentives that someone could receive from the state, and then hiring local crew, local vendors, filming more than the baseline amount of project here in Oklahoma City proper, and contracting with diverse businesses and vendors. So, you know, I kind of walked through this earlier, but when I talk about qualifying expenditures, what we're really looking at is the amount of a total film budget that would have a local sales tax impact here in Oklahoma City, and those would be qualifying expenses. So those things could include hotel rooms, restaurants and catering, car rentals and other retail expenses, wages and salaries of certain qualifying crew members. There's above the line costs and below the line costs. This would be for above the line costs that are taxable locally. Construction costs that was taxable, and the cost of basically vendor contracts. Go ahead. So additional eligibility requirement just to meet that baseline would be that a film would have to have a local production office here in Oklahoma City. They would have to film at least 50% of their filming days here in Oklahoma City city limits. And that production principal photography would have to begin after 180 days of signing a contract with the city, and that completion would be after, there's a completion and a start deadline that we'd have to meet, and also making sure from a contract perspective that we've closed the project out as well. They'd also have to credit Oklahoma City in their film, which I don't know. I find myself watching films closer now. I was telling that to Joanna, and seeing that big Georgia peach and the Atlanta logo and a lot of stuff. That's kind of the product placement we'd like to see out of some of this. I'm not going to walk through the entire application process, but I can tell you it would look a lot like the process that we have today. We're looking at stealing/borrowing some things from the state film incentive. The biggest criteria we have to have is an understanding of the budget of a film, how much of that budget would land here in Oklahoma City, and then we'd use that to make a cost estimate that we would bring to you as the trust on how much percentage rebate and amount we could potentially contract for with the production company. And then at the end, the way we'd see this moving forward would be, go ahead and go to the next slide, that we would use a third-party auditor, much like the state does, to qualify expenses for rebate. It wouldn't just be on Kathy and I to qualify those expenses. They'd have to use a third-party audit firm. And then they would bring that amount to us to qualify, approve, and then pay those rebates out. So it'd have to be at the completion and end of a film. We'd go through a process to qualify expenses, and then we bring that amount back to you that would match up with their initial contract or be less based if those receipts were less. And then you guys would make that payment. So very much performance-based, and also looking again at the overall ROI of the city. So I'm happy to answer questions. I know that was a lot to go through in a short amount of time. One thing I should mention too is part of our team, we did pull Tony Maston in, who used to work for the Oklahoma Tax Commission, to help make sure that we've kind of thought about structurally how this could be put together. It was a huge help, helped craft a lot of legal thoughts related to this, and then Wiley also helped us think about this as well. So I'm happy to add Wiley in or Kathy into the comments on this or questions on this as well.
I do have a question. I'm very familiar with the film festivals and industries here locally, so I'm curious on the television part or series. Does that include short films as well, or potential? And then second, are you looking to collaborate with the local organizations in the film industry to partner and help provide this information out?
Yeah, what I didn't say, and what I guess I could have said, is that we see this incentive complementing the existing assets and programming that's already here, but also probably the need to have a local film office that supports the industry more holistically moving forward, that really thinks about the moving parts to serve as an ombudsman for that person that is thinking about doing a film project locally, and also does a little bit more to market Oklahoma City as a film destination. To answer your question about the local film, I think as long as it met these qualifications, then yes. And of course, we'd want to have a partnership with those other film partners if we were to establish a local office.
Thank you.
Jeff, relative to Oklahoma City, like the crew, so someone in Edmond as a crew member, it wouldn't be eligible, correct?
For right now, what we've drawn is that line, because there's a shortage of existing crew in the metro,
Right.
is drawing a fairly large metro circle for that qualifying Oklahoma City resident. That's the way the language is currently crafted. But to your point, longer term, we want more and more of that to be centralized here in Oklahoma City.
Okay. Secondly, how does this package fare up to others in the market of Oklahoma?
Yeah, we're seeing other metros in Oklahoma start to establish local film programs. Bethany recently, I shouldn't say that. Bethany recently, I stopped myself. That does not go on the record, correct? Recently crafted a film incentive. We're seeing places like El Reno and Guthrie establish local film offices and put their name on the map. Tulsa has historically also had a film office, and they're looking at crafting a local incentive program. We think it may not be through the city, but with other local partners, and you could probably think who that might be. There's not a lot of cities that have established local programs. A lot of this traditionally happens through a state. But one of the challenges that we saw in this case is the state doesn't necessarily always have to take Oklahoma City's best interest at heart. They can market the entire state as a location when we have some specific assets we see as wanting to market and make sure those projects happen here versus others.
And lastly, I know you're looking at the Georgia Peach.
Yeah.
I think we know somebody that could do a cool logo for Oklahoma City that should be on all those videos.
We do know some people, don't we?
Yeah. Cool.
Thanks.
One thing I'd add to Rhonda's question, we did look at other cities that have a film incentive program outside of Oklahoma, like Austin and some other places, and I think we stack up really well compared to some of those. But like Jeff said, most of them are state incentive programs. The other thing I'd say is, again, this is pay for performance, and we really tried to tie it to sales tax generation for the city, because that's where we as a community or as a city organization get the impact. There's not a lot of other tax revenues that are generated by this that we can benefit from beyond sales tax. So.
The one thing I should have mentioned on that front is, much like the existing SIP program, it would very much be a partnership between the Chamber and the Alliance to vet specific projects, work through the process of analyzing that impact and the budget amount we talked about, and bringing that to you as a recommendation, just like we do traditional programs.
And the only other thing I'd point out is, I think what we're looking at initially is allocating about $3 million from the GOLT bond funds for this program and seeing how it goes. And obviously we can come back and set aside more if we're hugely successful. But that's kind of our initial proposal, is that we would set aside that $3 million and begin to market it and get the word out that we've got this available.
A question to follow on from that. The dates that are referenced, is that point to not tie up that capital for too long? I saw that 180 photography must begin, or what I think was considered primary photography must begin. Are those ideas borrowed from other jurisdictions, and is the purpose just to keep the capital more liquid and not tied up?
I think it's to force them to follow a schedule and complete the project. I think the state's had some experience with projects that they announced or allocated money to, and then they didn't happen. So trying to get them on some deadlines and benchmarks that they have to meet.
I'm just not familiar enough with the industry that they put it all together and have financing and then can actually start filming in 6 months. That was my concern. I could be wrong, but you hear
I think
stories
by the
about...
time they get to us, by
Yeah.
the time they're doing that, they pretty much have it all
It's there.
figured out.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
From what I'm learning, and we're all learning something new too with this, so.
I think I agree with Kathy. We're very much in the learning phase. B is we're hoping that by as Kathy said, by the time they come to us, they should have a fully formed plan, including a very specific budget. So they should have had their financing to us. They should have had it figured out by that point. That's our hope.
And the other side to think about is we don't want to tie up our money very long either if there's another film that's ready to go. Because we only have so much allocated to this.
Yeah,
Certainly.
ready for my close-up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You dressed for it today, so you're ready.
Yeah.
Glossy 8x10.
Any other questions for Jeff?
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. All right, do we have a motion on item 4E? So a motion and a second, please cast your votes. The item passes. All right, that brings us to item 4F, Oklahoma City Economic Development Foundation Retail Recruitment and Development Presentation. Tammy Fate.
Hello. Well, good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to kind of share with you what's happening on the retail front. So I'll give you kind of a quick overview of what's happened in 2021. First, we'll cover like national trends. We just recently did a supermarket study to kind of go over the whole entire canvas of Oklahoma City, and then talk about major developments that are underway, and then some announcements that have happened in 2021. So just to kind of go through some of the trends that are happening, mergers and acquisitions are still a major player in the retail arena. A merger that happened here, or an acquisition, would be SVP recently purchased Washington Prime, who owns Class and Curve and the Triangle. They're still going to operate as Washington Prime. Shrinking footprints continue to occur, which really allow the retailer to work on their brand and kind of curate that overall experience. You're seeing restaurants in grocery stores now. A good example of that is the Leo's Barbecue that's in the Homeland store. And you're seeing a lot more partnerships now after the pandemic. Discount retailers are still growing. Concepts like TJ Maxx, Ross, Dollar Tree have really seen an uptick in store sales. We worked with a group called Metro Merch, which is out of Tulsa, and they took 31,000 square feet on the south side, and they basically buy returns from Amazon, and then they sell them at a discounted rate. So they were able to backfill an existing building on the south side. And then experience and service focus would be retailers that are really trying to bring brands alive. So Nike's a good example of that. They've actually built treadmills and basketball courts and famous running routes into their store. And what they've noticed is it's not really changing the overall profit of the store, but it's really increasing that brand awareness and allowing more of a tourist attraction and helping elevate the brand. So that kind of goes into the next part of growth on the e-commerce and omni-channel, is that you're seeing a lot more money put into the e-commerce and omni-channel. Instacart is the #1 grocery delivery service being used right now. And because of COVID, there's a lot more money that's being put in technology. Social commerce is continuing to rise as well. So platforms like TikTok, Instagram Live, they showed that it's supposed to grow to $36 billion by the end of the year, and that's using platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and all the different social outlets. So technology, as I said, is continuing to grow. So everybody has a global smart speaker. It shows that the $35.5 billion is being spent on the global smart speakers, which is about 20% of smart speaker owners use them for shopping activities, ordering products, conducting product research, and tracking deliveries. And they're expected this number to grow to 52% by the next 4 years. And then ethical and value-based brands is really starting to grow, where people are paying more attention to the transparency, the values, and ethics that the shoppers are putting on that. So 71% of consumers prefer buying from brands that align with their values. So you're seeing a lot of companies really taking a stand on different policies and environmental issues. So this is just kind of a quick overview of the top 25 brands that in this year. So Peloton is still at #1. I think most of these we would kind of agree with by looking at the list. And then here's a quick breakdown. So as I mentioned, we have a supermarket study, so we partnered with the Alliance on this study. We work with a group out of Salt Lake City, and they help basically cover our entire market and figure out where the holes and gaps are. So this shows you currently who has the most share from a supermarket standpoint, And then we have a couple of different tenants that have kind of been looking in the market that would be new to market that could be changing this landscape here in the next year. Another trend that we're seeing is that cool is better than new. So basically taking existing buildings and doing a redevelopment. So this is a great example of really using texture and history and social identity. If you haven't been to the Harvey Bakery at 13th and Harvey, I would highly recommend it. And then here's another example of really implementing those outdoor spaces and using existing buildings, going in an economically challenged area and really kind of creating that environment. So this is Fairview, I just went blank on what it's called. Fairweather, yes, Fairweather Brewery. So this is done by Pivot Projects and the Pivot team, and the Harvey Bakery is one of their projects as well. So our very own Councilman Stone is on this one. So Capital Co-op is a group of local cyclist enthusiasts who opened their first bike shop in Capitol Hill. So this area has really served as a catalyst to bring people from all over the metro. And they partner with some of the local businesses over there. They do events, they do rides every week. And this has been a really big generator for the Capitol Hill district. And Chisholm Creek continues to activate the district. They have a boutique hotel in the works, and they're doing more multifamily. So they're partnering with a group out of Dallas, and the multifamily component will be right next to the Topgolf. They did have a dog park that opened there earlier this year called Solos. Has done extremely well. So they're continuing to add unique and different tenants to the overall experience. So as we all know, the Chickasaw Nation announced a $300 million destination development, and this has really gained a lot of attention in Chicago, New York. Anytime I go to trade shows, just having this as like something to talk about has really been an iconic piece since it's been announced. So the HAF continues to add new tenants. One core orthopedic hospital was built this year, 36,000 square feet, 7 single inpatient rooms, 3 surgical suites. And then Flex Brew House was able to open in the 3rd quarter of this year, and they've seen a positive growth. Was able to meet with the CEO of Flex and ask them, how did you guys choose, to come back online in Oklahoma City so quickly? And one of the things that they said is that the partnership that they have with American Fidelity was one of the best of all the markets that they've been in, because most of the time they will go into a market where they have 2 or 3 stores. But considering this is the only Flex Brew House in the entire state, it was really interesting to see why they decided to reopen here so quickly. But their relationships, they said, with American Fidelity was the main reason they're here. The Oak project near Penn Square, they've actually pulled permits. They're starting the first phase, which will be the multifamily component. They're still in negotiations with several large new-to-market tenants. They were hoping to have those announced by the end of this year, so hopefully sometime 1st quarter of next year, we'll see that announcement happen. Bar K has broken ground on their facility at the Boathouse. This has been a labor of love for at least 3+ years, and it continues to be daily. They've had a couple of pop-up events at their location as well, so here's kind of some pictures from the groundbreaking that happened, I think it was like 2 or 3 months ago when they actually turned some dirt. And then Truck Yard, this is another really cool concept that's out of Texas. So we've had the opportunity to work with them for, it's been at least 3 years as well. So they've kind of poked around, looked at the Oklahoma City market, and have finally landed on a location. So working with Randy Hogan and the Hogan team on doing something in Lower Bricktown near Bass Pro. And it will really serve as a catalyst between the Boathouse District and the Bricktown Canal. Producers Co-op, they have an agreement with PCOM and to serve as the master developer on this site. So they're going through the permitting and zoning and entitlement issues, and then we'll be starting the retail components. They're working with a couple of national retailers, and then there'll be a parking facility and also multifamily as part of this project. The Stand Tall, Shop Small campaign was something that was born out of the pandemic. And we partnered with the Independent Shopkeepers Association to do a big kind of campaign blitz in July, because July is one of the slowest months for retail. And we partnered with all the different commercial retail districts. So here's some examples of some of the campaigns that were ran during the month of July. And then here just shows the statistics for the whole month of July. So we tracked basically the audience platform, how many posts, the impressions, and the videos. So here's just some different ones that from the Adventure District to Paseo to Auto Alley. We have a campaign going on right now for the whole month of December that kind of encourages people to shop for the holidays. And then trade shows have really kind of picked back up. They're in full swing. So ICSC has done a huge rebranding called International Council of Shopping Centers. It's now Innovating Commerce, Serving Communities. We've had 4 shows in the last 3 months. This is the last one. So Kathy joined us out at the ICSC show in Las Vegas. And here's just kind of a quick overview. We had lunch at our booth. We had meetings scheduled. And now we're in the process of planning an event for February called the Red River Show, and it will be in Texas, and it includes Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Oklahoma. And then here's a quick rundown of some of the announcements that were announced in 2021. And I will take any questions you have.
Any questions? No? Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you.
Do we need a motion? No? Okay. All right, that brings us to item 5, General Manager Reports.
The general manager report is in your packets. I don't really have anything to add to the report, but we'll be glad to try to answer any questions.
No questions? Thank you, Kathy. All right, item 6 on the agenda, any comments from staff?
Happy holidays from the staff.
Thank you. Any comments from trustees?
Happy holidays from the trustees.
Same.
No way.
You sure? All right. I guess we didn't have any citizens to sign up. That's weird. I would just like to say real quickly, I hope everyone has a great Christmas and a happy New Year. And thank you all so much for all the work that you continue to do for us. We really appreciate it. So thank you. We are adjourned.